wrong button. Oh, hello, and welcome to the Fluid Voice. I am Ozma in the Dark, a person found occasionally somewhere on the internet, usually in Ozma in the Dark dot something. Anyways, I'm still using she/they pronouns because they still fit me. Christy, how are you doing?
Uh, I'm. I don't know. I'm someone in a kangaroo pouch. At least it has pockets. Uh, she, her.
Okay.
Although my voice belies that this week.
Perfect. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Been an interesting couple of weeks,
Yes, it has.
and I use he, him pronouns.
And finally, our our special guest from a turmoil of internet drama, Chud Logic. How are you doing?
Um, I think the best way to put it is ups and downs at the moment. Yeah, it's been a probably the most difficult week of challenges in my entire streaming career of like over a year now, to be honest. So yeah.
Fair. And before we get to things,
Oh, sorry,
like,
my pronouns are he, him. Sorry.
oh yeah, thank you.
He, him. Okay, sorry.
And before we get to the topic, I would like a reminder: like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell notification because I have succumbed to the horrible YouTube aspect thingy something. Today's been a weird day for sleep for me, okay? So, today's topic is parasocial relationships. And just to start things off, I was wondering, before we go into further discussion, what everyone's original thoughts, or the basic streamline, one paragraph thoughts about parasocial relationships. I'll begin because I am an egotistical hostess lady. No, the the thing about parasocial relationships is parasocial relationships get muddy when it comes to a lot of internet stuff, because it's a little bit harder to tell when there's actual minimal aspects of internet interaction when it comes to things. So I think sometimes it gets overused. I've seen parasocial relationships be used as like a buzzword, without actually applying some of the aspects of what makes a relationship parasocial. But at the same time, there's also more distance with internet stuff, so I can see how that can potentially seem less fulfilling. Anyone else, if you want to just give your briefest initial thoughts, and then we can dive into discussion.
I'm in the arts. It's something I actually deal with on some level at all times. And even if you're a very small person in the arts, it's not so much YouTube because there's more of a intersocial relationship. But if you're a performer or a writer at all, even small, there's a fan base, and it's always they always assume things and about your life that may or may not be there. That's it.
Perfect, or Chud Logic, your initial thoughts before we dive right in.
Well, I can be brief. I just I view it as being there's a whole breadth in there of possibilities, right? That run from the most innocent, I'm going to miss these characters when you're watching the last episode of a television series you've enjoyed and that sort of thing, to where that feels genuine, that you're going to be missing these people is how you're feeling, and that you feel you know them. And then there's people who get all confused, and I can easily see it with a lot of the people on YouTube who are basically publishing their lives, or their faux lives at the very least. It's sort of a fabricated life with fabricated drama, but they're pretending it's their real life and that you're in their kitchen and that people think that they know them and that they're friends. So I can see where people could get confused.
Chud Logic, how about you?
So, for anyone that doesn't know, the term parasocial relationship or parasocial interaction was actually coined in the 50s. And what's interesting about the term is when it was coined, it was used to refer to the asymmetric relationship that a viewer or a consumer or whatever you want to call them would have with, say, a celebrity, right? So you can imagine, someone looks at Marilyn Monroe on the TV or whatever the fucking style was at the time, and they're like, oh, look, Marilyn Monroe, she's really cool. They feel they've got a connection with her. And obviously Marilyn Monroe has got no idea like who this person is. Now, the thing is, obviously, over time, especially more recently, this has developed further. And as the interaction between the viewer and the streamer as the interaction between, say, a viewer and a content creator has increased through, say, YouTube or streaming, or even, sex work like OnlyFans, for example, it means that the relationship isn't quite one-sided, because obviously there's an awareness that the content creator has of the person that's consuming their product, but it's still asymmetrical. And I think that, new kind of media has created new challenges that need to be dealt with in order to ensure that obviously these relationships are healthy.
That is essentially where I was thinking about the sort of the blurred lines between when something becomes completely asymmetrical and when something becomes like a genuine back and forth relationship. Because obviously there are people online that I would consider acquaintances. There are people online that I would consider friends that I've never met in person. And that factors into this to some degree, because like at what point is the back and forth enough? Because like even when it comes to in real life friends, some people are more open than others. I know I'm relatively open. Like, at what point does the asymmetry really matter with relationships?
I mean, I can speak to this obviously, and this ties into some controversy that I've been involved in recently. I'll to keep it really simple, early on in my sort of streaming career, I was a lot more interactive with my Discord server. And off the back of that, I got into a few conversations with different people that, went further than just like, a chat. Like there was some sexting and some flirting and things like that going on. And like having like, basically since this controversy has come about, it's been a time of like introspection for me. And what I've come to realize is that if you are like, I mean, I don't want to be too like broad with this, but I think that like a level of caution is very important when it comes to interacting with people. And I think that applies if you're like a content creator, but also more broadly as well, because, you don't really know who some of these people are, you've got no real indication of what they're about. And, you don't have that kind of same connection as you would sort of meeting in person or something like that, you know. So yeah, I think like a degree of caution is always required when engaging with people online. I think that when it gets to the stage where you're talking regularly and you're maybe hanging out in voice chats, you know, enjoying activities together like video games or whatever it is that people do, watching movies, etc., you know, maybe at that point it starts to develop into be less of a parasocial thing and like more of an actual friendship or a relationship. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Christy and Perfect, you've been relatively quiet.
No, I've been considering since this came up. I've been considering various things. On one of the things, and I found myself doing this, is feeling that a creator owes you in any way, or you've been friendly with somebody and for whatever reason they got too big. I'm thinking of one person in particular I don't want to name, but he got very big. Yeah, that narrows it down. He got very big and switched his Twitter to mutuals only and doesn't go in the comment section. And when it used to be a very fruitful back and forth between him and his fans, and I found myself getting disappointed at that, and I'm like, oh. On the other hand, I've been friends with Steve Shives for like 1,000 years now. and I do consider him a friend. He also does mutuals only, so it's kind of like, oh, but I'm one of them, so it's okay that he does it. So I'm completely hypocritical when it comes to all of this, which is part, I think, of the whole parasocial thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, when it comes to that, like, so some content creators are very much just being themselves and being very raw with things, but even then, like, nobody is completely themselves online. Like,
yeah,
I try to be myself as much as possible, but me and Christy have talked about this, like how there's a switch we turn on when it comes to doing stuff online. Like the types of conversations I'm going to have online while I'm being as much myself as possible, I am also treating aspects of it like a job where my job is to converse with people and to talk with people, and obviously parasocial relationships are a real thing, but at the same time it works. There are potential negatives both ways because people can get hurt by parasocial relationships when those things are exploited, in mind. So like I have to talk about how I got into streaming. So a while ago, sometime early last year, like, I didn't start really getting into Twitter until after I started taking Zoloft and having the my depression and anxiety being treated. And once that happened, it became a lot easier for me to just be myself and to not beat myself up for saying stuff, not over worrying about what I say and what sort of friendships I have. Now, that being said, I became friends with some of the people in Actual Jake's community from the show Hugo and Jake because I was a fan of it. Now, because of certain circumstances, there was a falling out between a lot of the community members. Some of it was stuff that made sense. Like, Jake being in Discord less made sense, because when you're dealing with content creation and other stuff, like, it takes more time. But at the same time, there were people who genuinely, there was actual back and forth, and for that to just be called like parasocial when convenient didn't help, since Jake did go back and forth between whether he called someone a friend or a parasocial relationship, depending on what looked better. Look, I don't like Jake. That's the essence of this. No, I'm just saying that you can get hurt because you don't really know the content creators themselves. So I think it's generally a good idea to not get too invested into parasocial relationships, and that can, while it technically has benefits, you can get hurt if you dive too far into it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that you touched on something interesting there, because I think you've got streamers now that will literally stream their entire lives, right? So
yeah,
they'll sit there for like literally 12 hours a day, and they'll eat and they'll talk to their community and they'll watch stuff, and it's like, that is the majority of their waking hours. And I think it does create this interesting sort of dynamic where people have got this view into someone's life, and Christy, you mentioned this like sense of entitlement, and I think that starts to come through. Like, one example of this I can think of off the top of my head recently is Hassan said, oh, I'm going to play this new game Cyberpunk 2077 on stream, and people were getting annoyed with him because he wasn't covering political content, he wasn't watching the news, and it's almost like they have this expectation that they have a deciding say over what happens on the stream. And it's like, well, no, I'm the content creator. I get to decide the content I want to make. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's quite an interesting example where that entitlement can really come through. And yeah, I think it's just the nature of the beast, is if you are the kind of broadcaster who sits there for 12 hours a day, that's going to become more of an issue for you,
Yeah, although... Yeah.
I subscribed to you. I helped make you.
Yeah,
I can destroy you.
Like, there's some truth in that, right? Like, some people will, they'll get so frustrated with something that they'll say, "Oh, you've lost yourself." The kind of image of like someone angry in a shop going, "You've lost yourself," a customer, and storming out. They try and do that, but online. But it's like, well, okay, like, fair enough, but you can't be there and think I'm going to do exactly what you want to do. You've got to appreciate that I'm here as a content creator to do the content I want to do. You might be able to have a say or have some input, but you can't just dictate what goes on.
Yeah, and that being said, like, obviously criticism is its own mixed bag of like helpful and hurtful stuff, because there are aspects of your real life that come through on the internet, and the bigger you become, the more likely aspects of your life are gonna start showing up, because you just did enough stuff on the internet, and the internet doesn't get rid of stuff easily. So like, people, there are times when people will criticize you that there is legitimate aspects of it, and there are times when stuff can be taken out of context to make people look bad. Look, I'm sorry, Chud Logic. It's just, I saw the Destiny breakdown of it, and I can't help but think about, like, there was, like, a person not the original person that you really fucked up on, that who also took your shit out of context to make you look worse, but all because I saw the uncensored, because there were uncensored logs that explain stuff that didn't look as bad, but like there was someone who's like 31 who acted like you groomed her because you have an audience of 6,000 people, and that's not how that works. None of that is how that works.
So I think like, you know, without going into like the details of naming names and stuff, but there was obviously someone else that came out and did this thread, and I think there was some confusion in the way that it was worded, and this person admitted in their video that was the case. I think for me, like, you know, I've definitely learned a lot from this experience, and of course, like, I'll be changing the way. I mean, I've made changes already. You know, some of this stuff goes back to you know, early last year. But I think for me, it's like, you know, it's like there was obviously something that I did that caused someone to be uncomfortable, which is totally legitimate. You know, but I feel like that has been, and you know, whatever you want to call it, maybe they thought I was creepy or whatever they want to describe it as, and that's totally fine. Like, I'll take that and I'll work to be better. I think that the problem you've got is that that thread was, I think, made with good intentions to bring attention to something and get it addressed. But everyone kind of starts to jump on board and to take what's been said and twist it to spin whatever narrative that they want to spin. So, for example, and this is something that I think is interesting as well, there are absolutely people out there, because we talk about parasocial relationships in the context of, say, you know, a fan being like absolutely enthralled with a content creator and loving them and wanting to be like them and wanting to hang around them, and they'll never be able to, etc., etc., right?
Yeah.
But there's the other side of that as well, which I call like the anti-stan. And there's absolutely, if you're a public figure, there's people that exist that just hate you for whatever reason it is, right? And you know, in this example, there were people who gave good criticism, and I took it, and we spoke about it, and I did a stream about it and spoke about what happened and explained it all. But there were people who took it and went like a million miles in the other direction. You know, people that I've never even heard of saying things like, "Oh, I always had a bad vibe about that guy," and stuff like this. You know, and it's like, but you don't know me. You've never spoken to me. You only know me from my content. You know, and that to me is an example of a parasocial relationship, but like on the inverse, right? Where people feel like they've got an understanding or feel like they know you, but they don't really know you at all. And that's, I think, one of the difficulties with being a public figure is like, you know, you're to a degree monitored, and then if you do make mistakes, you then have to deal with those very publicly. You know, if someone privately makes an error offline or has a problem at work that needs to be sorted out, broadly it can be dealt with privately or it can be dealt with discreetly. But online, it's like everyone gets to see what's going on, you know?
Well, yeah, but at the same time, when it comes to online, there's some... So, that gets into the complicated thing, because, like, there are different types of people online. There are people who... there are people who are egotistical and want that information to be dealt with privately so that they can face no repercussions and just sweep it under the rug. And because of because of that, even if it is technically a minority of the people, which I think it's a larger amount online than the just in general going and talking to people, because like it helps to have somewhat of an ego to do stuff online. Like, so you're gonna, the people who have who are exceptionally egotistical are more likely to do some amount of content creation just due to the fact that it's easier. But I
think you've got a good point there, right? So it's like, you know, I agree that like you stuff should be dealt with. So there's accountability, right?
Yeah.
Having just gone through this cycle myself, like, and being at the center of it, you know, everyone's talking about you. Everyone's like, you know, tearing apart what you thought were going to be private messages, you know, and I think the problem you've got is because you've got all these people who, you don't know them. They're just random people on the internet.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they've got this enormous interest in you, and they're tearing everything apart. It's like, it doesn't really feel like this is the right way to deal with this, or it's the right way to have accountability when things go wrong or people make mistakes.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of those things where it's just so... it's so hard to... that's one of those things where, like, I don't know what the best way... Because I've also been... like I mentioned, I'm not a fan of Jake, and I tried to call out some of the things that upset me about Jake without giving personal information about people who would be affected. So there's, like, I was playing a game of trying to point out issues while at the same time not, and then, like, Jake and his not his entire fan base, but, like, a lot of people jumped down my throat on Twitter. Like, a hardcore lot of people, including Jake, especially because I made an offhand comment about a time that was intended to be an offhand comment about a time that I got triggered by the way Jake acted or whatever, and I wasn't trying to say, because I actually got triggered. I went to the therapist helped me out, and in dealing with that, and then I heard about other stuff that upset me or whatever, and then I had people telling me that it's impossible for Jake to have triggered me because I don't know him, and that's not how triggers work. But, like, I had people like that in my comments, like, attacking me personally, attacking aspects that I said that are attacking real moments of my life and saying that they were lies. And those things genuinely hurt. And I understand that you don't want to get, like, hate mobs down people's throats, because I don't think that necessarily
that just sounds that they were being scared and illogical there. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that with people. They're going to do that occasionally.
I don't think you deserved what you got on Twitter. I do think you did not do a good job on the video.
Yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine.
I think there is one place where he speculated on private life, and I thought that was out of bounds. But I told you that at the time, so I'm not, like, throwing this at you out of nowhere.
Yeah, and, like, yeah, and I don't even know. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's one that's. There's one thing that wasn't, like, a speculation, but it was something that I couldn't explain details about without outing someone. So then I was kind of, like, I didn't know how to bring shit up. But yeah, it was a poorly thought out thing that I did. It was one of more than one poorly thought out things that I did, and yeah.
I'm not criticizing you. I was using it as an example, not criticizing you. We've had that conversation.
Yeah, so. we have had that conversation, and it's fair.
The one thing, and I want to sideline it a bit, because that is one of the stands is something I've had experience with when the atheist world blew up. The last time.
Which time? That's gonna be fake.
Which time with the atheist world blowing up? When when a bunch of them went super conservative, or when
No, the turf the turf wars.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So during that, one of the major players, I admit, I don't remember in whose. It was not in that, but everybody was defending somebody who was a bully. And I mentioned just somewhere that said person had bullied me, and they deliberately tried to get it up to 8,000 hate comments at me. For even saying that person bullied me, which is like, are you fucking kidding me? This is exactly, you're doing what exactly you're telling me I'm lying about.
Wouldn't that count as bullying? I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That became my response. You realize that's what you're doing right now. And they kept saying, prove it. I'm like, here's where you go. I'm not going to revisit this or screen cap it, because I don't want to revisit that. That was very harmful to me.
Yeah.
This is where you find it. They said, well, if you can't prove it here where you said it, it's like, are you fucking kidding? I point you out where to go.
Well, and this is one of those things where
for the record, I had to agree not to mention the person's name online in order to make it stop.
Yeah. We've had a interesting online life. My online life really started recently, so the past couple years. That's about it. Emily brings up a good point about Emily and Noopy bring up some stuff about community, and I think when it comes to parasocial relationships, like, I don't to some degree with content creation, I think it, like, how do you even like try to change the mind of how much effect you have over your community?
Yeah, well, I was going to sort of say that yeah, basically what happens is you have a content creator, and you get all these people in the community, and they start watching them, and it's almost like a sports game, right? So people go to a sports game, they get really fucking angry, they go, oh, that fucking team cheated, or they scored, or whatever, they fucking cheer, they boo, etc., right? But it's like, that's condensed to 90 minutes, and then people leave, and that's it, they go on with their lives. And I think that with like content creators, that kind of sports team mentality is just a constant undercurrent of discourse, and it kind of like, at any time there could be some drama that erupts, and all of a sudden these two communities are like essentially engaged in like an online war with one another, and there's people, maybe the center point of maybe someone who's made a criticism of someone, and if they haven't got that community behind them and they're a smaller creator, it's like a big wave crashing down on them of literally hundreds or maybe even thousands of people angrily replying to tweets and coming after them. And I think, to answer your question about responsibility for that sort of thing, I think it's about making it clear that as a content creator, you don't support that. If you see people doing that behavior, you'll ban them and you'll remove them from the community to try and stop it. But to be really honest with you, I don't really know if there's a lot you can do to completely eliminate that behavior. There's, I think, going to be people in your community. It doesn't matter what your political persuasion is or what kind of content you make broadly. Once your community gets to a certain size, there will always be people that will be bad actors. And unfortunately, these social media platforms that we go onto, like Twitter, they're monetized around engagement. And one thing that drives engagement is conflict. So it's not in, say, Twitter's interest to put in place measures that are going to stop this, because the more conflict there is, the more people there are using the website. So one way I think about this is that really, if you think about it, it's like it's just incentivized behavior in some ways. The person that's doing the fucking harassing or whatever, they think that maybe they'll be noticed, or they'll think that it will be appreciated by the content creator. Twitter are fucking laughing all the way to the bank with all these people on their platform angrily tweeting at each other, and the person in the middle who has made a criticism or done something that to wrong, in inverted commas, the content creator, they just get this wave of assault crashing down on them. And unfortunately, sometimes they don't have the support to deal with it. And yeah, it's fucked up,
Yeah. I know definitely when I got dogpiled, and by the way, even though the video was poorly thought out, doing a 4-hour video, doing an 8-hour stream where 4 hours of which you're shitting on a video made by a person who has 20 subscribers, who had 20 subscribers at the time on YouTube, is still a fucking dick move. But yeah, no, I definitely got, I have felt the pain of being dogpiled, and I felt the pain of accidentally causing conflict without intending to, and it's one of those things where I'm trying to be better in both those things. I did have a thought, so long as we're thinking about it, when it comes to I think it might help to encourage community members to call out other community members if they're like hardcore being mean to someone.
Yeah. So for me, the way that I view these things is, I think you can mitigate some of the issues. So, for example, in the recent controversy that happened with me, I noticed Destiny was covering it, and I thought, okay, this could well lead to people from Destiny's community coming and harassing the people that have levied accusations, which isn't something I wanted at all. I wanted to avoid that and just deal with it as effectively as possible, so everyone was more or less satisfied with the outcome. And it seems like people generally are, and it seems like we're sort of moving on from it. But unfortunately, that clip of Destiny covering it got put on the Livestream Fails subreddit, and the people over at Livestream Fails are capital G gamers, right? Like, they don't fuck about. They're all the isms,
So here's where I will defend the term gamer.
Okay.
As the high tier gamer, these are the wannabe gamers who wish they were as good as like me and Zavars. They wish they were the faker of their time, but they can't do anywhere near as they think they can, and so they want to shit on people and put them down for but no, I know what you mean, like the general thing. No, I mean there is a negative aspect of gamer culture that's genuinely there. The R slur is like a big thing that has just become far too used in gamer lingo. And some top tier people who do it professionally are more likely to. You can't play a team sport if you're being an asshole to everyone. So that's why oftentimes like the top tier people are like less of an asshole than like the people who brag and bitch online all the time.
No, absolutely. They're the faux gamers. I totally agree with you. But so that went on to there. And basically the point I'm trying to make here is so my response to all this happening, I was thinking, well, what can I do? So I obviously tweeted out about it. And I also went on to Destiny's subreddit and said, hey, look, please don't go after anyone that's levying accusations. Link to my side of the story, go and listen to that. And I had some people reply and say, okay, like, fair enough, I'll respect that, I won't do anything. So I think, like, there's a couple of people that maybe I reached and made them rethink maybe going and doing that. But when you look at it broadly, if you've got 1,000, I mean, I don't know the exact number, if you've got even say 100 people that are going to go and do this thing, I think there's only a certain degree that the content creator can mitigate. So you might be able to stop, say, 5 or 10 people from doing it, but that's still 90 people coming at you.
Yeah.
And I think to broaden the conversation out, like in your example, if you're going after someone who has got, like, much less subs than you, unless it's an egregious thing that's happened, maybe in that circumstance it might be worth considering. But I think for me, certainly, I generally would look at people that have got more subscribers than me, because it feels a bit fairer then, and it doesn't feel like I'm just finding a 10 sub channel and like being like, yeah, look at this fool or whatever, and then accidentally setting my entire fan base on them or something like that.
Yeah, that's where, like, I've heard a lot of arguments about punching up or whatnot is generally better, except for egregious things like
okay, you can't always be punching up, and then there's the hiding behind being small and that sort of thing that comes with that. But what you can do is things that really actually affect your fan base. Don't say don't go there. That doesn't really work, and it doesn't communicate well. But if you say, when you go there, remember, you're going to be perceived as representing me.
Okay.
So behave yourself. Then when they behave themselves, they're doing good for you.
That's interesting. That actually touches on something really important, I think, and it's the fact that Twitter is a public platform. As in, everything you put up, you might as well be writing a post-it note and sticking it on the wall of the town square, right? Everyone's going to see it. And like, whilst I obviously support the idea that people should be able to like freely express, obviously, whatever they want, like I mean, obviously there's some exceptions to that, but broadly speaking, people should be able to voice their thoughts and opinions, right? Without fearing this mob coming to attack them for it. But I think the problem you've got is if you put something up that is like a bad take or incorrect, people are going to rush to come and correct you. And it's unfortunate, but obviously as people retweet it and quote tweet it and sort of dunk on it and things like that, it spreads further and further and further. Again, sorry, what are you going to say?
That's interesting, because that's exactly, you were talking about something earlier, talking about the outrage effect. And I went, that explains, that works to help explain the Cunningham effect, which is a guy named Cunningham who he worked on the Wikipedia, the self-editing principle that you can have a public edited thing. And he said that he just defined the principle of the fastest way to get the correct information in social media is to post the wrong information.
Yeah.
That if you just say something that's wrong, people will correct you faster than they will answer you. If you asked, how many people live in Latvia? Just post how many people live in Latvia, and it's the wrong number. People will come and tell you it's wrong, and this is how many it is. That's part of it, is that if you say something wrong, people come to you like a storm.
And the thing is, on top of that as well, it doesn't even have to be wrong. It could be right. But if you're a big content creator and you say this is wrong, people will still come and tell you it's wrong, even though it could be right, So, when you've got a large following, when you've got a large subscriber base or whatever, your word, like, it sounds a bit extreme, but your word is God, your word is law in some ways, right? People have got that trust in you. And that is where the parasocial stuff comes in, because you've built up this relationship. People have got this great trust in you that you have the power essentially to decree something wrong. And that's it. That then becomes wrong. Everyone goes on board, piles on, and it's such a mess. And I think the problem we've got is, like, we're not really equipped to deal with this yet. This is all still quite new when you think about it, right? Like, you know, cinemas existed for however long. You would have people obsessing over movie stars and stuff like that. But, you know, now you've got that with people where there's a closer relationship, and they will have more interaction to say, you know, this is wrong, that's wrong, and then they'll act on that, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's actually so there are a couple factors that relate to that. One, people aren't taught how to define what the measure is they're using for truth. So people will often knee jerk and just respond and won't step back and be like, okay, this is my qualification on accurate information. They'll just
What's
be
that
like,
you say? Epistemics are an underexplored avenue in our educational system. I'm shocked. Shocked, I say.
yeah, because like you're taught from a young age just to repeat what the teacher told you. And so, of course, there are people who hear something that sounds right when they hear it. So, like, it feels right. So it's easier to just, like, repeat. Like, it's like, well, I've thought about these things before, so this must be right. And, or even less thought of just, like, I like this person, so and what they said fits how I view the world, so therefore it's probably right. Without that very important stepping back, especially if you're going to do something with genuine impact, it is helpful to step back and be like, what this person is said to have done this bad thing. Okay, what qualifies it as bad? What are the qualities that are bad? And could someone who was not trying to do a bad thing do this exact same thing? And how likely is that?
This is going to seem off because I started working through it before you started on so it's branching off from where you started as well. There's a song from Grease, the movie Grease. I don't think it's in the play. And it's called Look at Me, I'm Sandra Dee, which has the distinction of every male character mentioned in it as a hunk who real ladies man is gay, and all the women mentioned in it were addicts. And I don't think people caught on to that. But I keep that in mind every time I try and think about how we perceive people in the social square who are at all famous. Okay.
Okay,
Perfect's the only one who knows what the song is. So
I'm trying to remember if it's in the play at all or not, and I
okay.
I can't say that. Well,
that's not the important part of it.
I know, but once again, I'm lost in the minutia. Sorry.
Well, I mean, at that the reason probably I didn't know it I didn't realize what it was doing at the time is because Rock Hudson wasn't known to be gay yet. So,
but yeah, back to the parasocial relationship thing. I think that's one of those things where people are not taught how to deal with parasocial relationships on either end of them. Especially not like the fan side.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a new phenomenon.
What?
I was just saying. Sorry, go on, and I'll.
Yeah. So like people aren't taught how to deal with that. And I think that's one of those things where it's helpful to just take a breather from some things, because I think especially with parasocial relationships, it's easy to get on a binge feeling and dive into them. I'm quite certain I've done that before. But like, I think it's helpful to take a breather and take a step back and focus on the non-parasocial relationships that you have, so you can remember the distinction, because there is a difference.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, whilst some of the content that exists now that generates even stronger parasocial, like these parasocial relationships, I think we're like an unprecedented time of like alienation under capitalism. Especially with COVID and various lockdowns that are happening,
Yeah.
it's tough, right? And just to be clear, like, I'm not like a lockdown skeptic. I support the idea of obviously sorting the virus out, and lockdowns unfortunately are one effective way to do it. But in any case, that has a knock-on effect that people are kind of lonely. They're at home. What have they got? I mean, in my room I've got a TV and an Xbox, my computer, and that's kind of it. So
your friends your friends might be at work at a time when you're not at work.
Yeah, precisely. And you end up kind of ingratiating yourself, and the other thing too is there could be people who maybe don't have friends even, right? And they end up going online and they see someone speaking, or they can interact with someone, and it feels nice. It's just that, like, it's not the same thing as having like a friend, right, that you can talk to and interact with like you do a friend. And I think one thing that I see sometimes is like, and don't get me wrong, like, obviously there can be a healthy way for you to support your favorite streamer, but I think some people get to the point where the act of supporting the streamer is their social interaction that they get in their life. So them donating and the streamer reading out their donation, that's their social interaction. And I don't know how broad this is or widespread this is, but it's like that's an issue, right? Like if someone is getting interaction by paying money to someone, and that's their only social interaction, it's like, that isn't good. I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean, but I think part of the problem is it's so like I mentioned, I was a lot more social after taking Zoloft and dealing with depression and anxiety or whatnot, and I don't know what aspect of depression or anxiety it was, but it was or how much of it was just some of the aspects of being trans and just feeling completely left out by society. I wasn't in an emotional position to recognize the friends that I had, and instead, because of the depression and anxiety, I tended to see the friendship aspects as temporary, whereas it's a lot easier to see a parasocial relationship, because it's their job that they're doing to go out and have that partial communication. It's easier for that to feel safer. So I can 100% say, like, see how someone, even if they have regular friends, can get sucked up into that because we don't have good ways to deal with psychological stuff like depression. And I mean, we have good ways to deal with depression and anxiety, but like our culture, at least here in America, is not like, I mean, it's getting more focused on people just in general getting therapy and trying to help themselves out, but the economic struggles also add to that to make it harder.
One of the, for me, one of the greatest tricks that like capitalism has kind of pulled, and that our current socioeconomic paradigm has pulled, is to create this idea that depression or mental health issues are like a unique, like an individual thing. Like your brain isn't working properly, you know, take these pills and it will make you feel better, right? Now, you know, I'm not saying, like, obviously, you know, I'm for taking antidepressants if the doctor prescribes them to you. But the point I'm trying to make is it's actually the system that is at the root of many of these issues from my perspective, you know. And I think that, like you say, poverty, the alienation I mentioned earlier, that can have an absolutely crushing impact on your mental health. And we've kind of been tricked into believing that, you know, oh, it's just your brain that's malfunctioning and the chemicals aren't working properly. It's like, well, no, actually, if you actually think about what causes these issues, there's definitely a root there in what we have. Did you see what I mean? It's like, and I mean, it creates this toxic thing where like, you know, it's like in some ways it's the system that's creating these issues, and then the system comes and presents the, you know, I don't know, whatever it is. Oh, here's a Twitch streamer that you can, you know, you can interact with, or you know, here's someone who you can have a pay to have an interaction with, you know. And it's, I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, that's one factor, but that's only one small factor. We also have a lot of cultural factors that, well, part of the reason why that seemed like a scary thing, the idea of friends just distancing themselves as time goes on, and not knowing if I'd make new friends, is there's a lot of focus of a lot in the sort of heteronormative aspects of society.
Okay.
Women are supposed to act like the therapists to men in relationships, and once those two end up in a relationship, that takes a strong priority over friendship. And I realize there are aspects of any sort of relationship, especially if kids are involved, that there's a lot more time and focus put into raising the kids. But like all the TV shows showing like the 50s housewife, yeah, and also like your brain can just work a certain way, and that's not. There's situational depression and there's clinical depression, and they're two distinct things. People can be situationally depressed because of poverty, but obviously there is clinical depression and anxiety where no matter how okay your life is, it will never feel okay.
But that's also there are incidents that permanently change your brain. I mean, it's not entire. I mean, poverty is a stressor. Capitalism itself is a stressor.
The heteronormative relationship system that we have, or like how friends are set up. There's a whole thing I've seen about how men are not taught how to have friends well. like close friends that they can feel emotionally close to.
No, that's absolutely right.
Yeah, I remember my stepfather telling me if you can count your good friends on one hand, then you're really lucky. I'm like, no, I've got more than that. Thank you.
I've got too many good friends now. Now that I started medicating myself.
Yeah, when you mentioned Zoloft earlier, I remembered I forgot to take one.
I honestly don't know if I took mine yesterday or not, but like, not taking it for days not a big deal. But the fact of the matter is, like, for me, it is definitely clinical, and there are aspects of this gets into ableism a bit, and as long as we're past the 1 hour mark, fuck it. So, like, when it comes to neurodiversity, a lot of what makes things crippling, neurodiversity is crippling depending on the society that you're in. If you are a deaf person, if most of the people are deaf, having hearing is a disability, because you can have like tons of loud ass machinery out and it's not bothering anyone. It's weird that's bothering you because you can hear it. A lot of writers have gone into aspects of ableism in society, but it's a similar thing with neurodiversity. Like depression and anxiety are useful for aspects of primitive survival, but they're not useful as useful in a capitalistic society. And the aspects of the brain that are harmful won't, if society, depending on how society changes, won't necessarily be as harmful and might not need to be medicated to survive. And it starts to get into a really complicated thing when you're talking about neurodiverse things, because obviously capitalism isn't going to remove neurodiversity, and neurodiversity isn't inherently something that's wrong.
Well, one of the things I've always one of the reasons I believe I started writing, because I started writing from really young, was to explore how people thought, because I couldn't understand it just on a social level. And writing and exploring thought processes and how people react and emotions and such helped. I mean, I'm very empathetic, but I'm empathetic in a very broad, in a very broad sense. Like, anybody is hurt, I'll freak out, or well, not freak out, but I don't ever want to see people hurt. That kind of thing. So it's not a bad thing how my brain works, but it's sometimes I have difficulty. Like my eyesight, if I'm doing a 1,000-piece puzzle, I can tell, I can distinguish bits of sky pretty easily. That's like one of the ways my brain works, but I can only tell what someone's feeling within a range.
Okay, but your open and gentle nature, do you think that would be encouraging parasocial relationships that people might feel towards you as a content creator? Or
well, I think more as a writer. I mean, I don't have a lot of fans, but I have very dedicated fans, which is nice. And it's hard. I mean, most of I had. Let's go with had, because I dropped my career in the mid 2000 aughts, and I had to pick it back up again. Yeah, I mean, because because if you feel very deeply and you can convey that, and I can't not convey that, and it's one of those things. It's one of the reasons why on my own channel I chose to do non-confrontational interview type stuff. That's not what I'm about online, because I don't want to get into dealing with other people's severe difficulties past a certain point. I mean, obviously there's some we'll talk about, and I only started doing this because I wanted to deal with being trans in the first place. Okay.
I mean, you raise an interesting point there actually as well, because I think if you are the kind of person who doesn't have these sort of super confrontational interactions with people on these platforms, you probably will naturally cultivate an audience that probably isn't going to be the kind of people that are going to go and attack people online and things like that, right? And it kind of plays into that sports mentality where if you are having these, big spectacle debates with people, and then you've got the people on your side and the people on the other side, it's that sports ball mentality, I think, that generates these massive kind of followings of people who will just go out there and attack, at a moment's notice, So I think like the way kind of you're approaching it, naturally you'll find will probably help in some way to disarm some of these issues.
Oh yeah, I mean, online that's more or less what I cultivate, but other than yelling at turfs, that's a separate category.
Well, I mean, I usually have a discussion until I get blocked.
Yeah, that's actually true, because I try and be empathetic toward them and go, okay, what is it you don't understand? Let's see if we can figure this out.
Yeah, well, sorry. Either I get blocked or it's just essentially going around in a circle. So, like, I've had an argument with someone who claimed to be a doctor or whatever, and they tried to put an anti-trans point that was specifically anti-trans women. And I pointed out some of the other facts in it, and they're just like, no, but that's not what the study means. I'm just like, it's right here in the study you linked me, so like, I don't know what you mean. It's not what it means.
It's what the people who did the study think it means.
Yeah.
It's there in the abstract.
It was some study of trans people who got in trouble for who were trans for violent action, and they're trying to say that trans women retained male violence type argument, and I'm just like, well, I mean, trans men are more violent, and trans women are significantly less violent than men, so I don't know what you're trying to say in this argument.
Well, the
and then for some reason pointing out trans men, they don't know how to deal with that.
The one thing they do is often they'll use sex offenses in the UK, but sex offenses also includes prostitution.
Yeah, that doesn't.
So
that doesn't help, and because
UK,
it's always fucking UK.
Yeah, I'm sorry, everyone. I apologize for my country.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how. So, I realized we're in a competition for worst country ever that's been going around for the past 4 years.
Yeah.
UK is more transphobic and, more COVID cases. And then January 6th happened.
Yeah.
Because we have to try to one-up you in the UK. Like, we had to storm the Capitol building. Well, the mega people did.
Yeah. You had people storm the Capitol building and smear shit all over the place. I mean, that was
Yeah,
one of the
and
places and smeared it.
well, and also had pipe bombs, and
Well, there's that. I mean, you know.
and there's the zip tie person who was arrested. There's several people who got arrested.
300 last count.
I just, you know, it's the shit smearing gives you an idea of the quality of the looters.
Well,
the rioters.
I think actually, and this is something that I don't really see spoken about a lot. So what I'm thinking is either really smart and no one's thought of it, or really dumb. That's why no one's speaking about it. But basically, one thing that I think is really noticeable with Trump and other politicians too, but particularly Trump, is there is definitely elements of parasocial relationships going on with this, right?
Oh yeah.
And if you look at the way Trump communicates with his audience, it's on Twitter, it's on videos. You know, he sort of goes around the mainstream press. Like the mainstream press, for better or for worse, you know, acts as a filter for politicians for us, right? But Trump just fucking circumvents that, and he's on Twitter just tweeting out his stream of consciousness.
Well, not
You know,
anymore.
he's
He's
in a video.
not. But yeah.
Well,
Not anymore.
Dang,
Yeah,
man,
true.
you is smooth the way you just segued that in. That was cool.
Got him.
one of the things that Trump and Biden do have in common, and Bill Clinton before, not so much George H.W. or Obama, but sorry, not so much George W. or Obama, is the very conversational way of speaking. Bill Clinton was a little more aloof about it, but Biden and Trump both have a very conversational and intimate way of speaking to their audiences, which is a useful thing to have, even if whether you use it for evil or good, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think like this extends to lots of a variety of politicians from all across the political spectrum. But I do feel very much like, you know, people become like, for me, when I look at a politician, I'm thinking that's a public servant, right? What can they do for me, you know? But I think people get into this thing where, and this is particularly true with the storming of the Capitol building, these people were willing to go and do this for Trump, you know? But it's like, that's the wrong way around. Like, Trump should be working for you as a politician, not you doing shit for him. Do you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, and well, I mean, that's part of how people can get manipulated and abused. That's why learning to make sure to step back and look at a situation in a more for lack of a better way to describe it, the more objective way, like just looking at the taking yourself out of the situation. People need to be taught how to take themselves out of the situation because it's helpful for looking at whether someone's treating you decently too, because these people are just manipulated into acting in their worst interest and being lied to, and they believe it, and they believe they're fighting for, like, a lot of them believe they're fighting for a good cause. I mean, the people who are doing a lot of the hardcore manipulation, the core aspects of the manipulation, don't give a fuck, because they're oftentimes the people who don't. Well, like Trump doesn't give a fuck what he says, or at the very least, he doesn't seem to give a fuck what he says. In terms of how it affects things, but like, I don't know, people assume that most people need a reason to lie, and there's some people who don't need a reason to lie. There are some people who will just lie. And
I did not.
I think growing up with that is one of the reasons why it's been so maddening for me.
Yeah, but I mean that's
I'm like more or less unable to lie, which I would love to have that skill. It's a lovely skill to have, but
um yeah, I mean
I'm being slightly sarcastic here, but I
yeah,
just
I
don't
mean
know.
I have there are circumstances which I'm good at lying, and there are circumstances which I'm bad at lying, and I am very aware of the potential consequences, especially on a larger platform, which is why I try to not. Mm, I don't know. I try to be careful about some of the things I say. Some of the things I mean, I'm not a perfect person. I make mistakes. Perfect is the only
We can't
perfect
all be
person here.
perfect.
Yeah, no, sorry. That's never gonna get old. That's always gonna come up. I'm sorry. You have a perfect name choice for perfect puns. But the thing about this is it's just very like I don't know. It's hard not to sympathize with people being um people who are genuinely being exploited and just being fucked over for no good reason, and people who aren't taught how to not be fucked over. And
Yeah.
admittedly, it's a lot of work in the current system to not get fucked over, and we don't really know how to fix it completely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the I mean the rise of the reason Trump is so able to effectively propagandize and use these techniques to get people like totally, some have referred to it like almost like cult like, right?
Yeah.
Is because like I do think that broadly there is obviously like a lack of education, right? And um yeah, I don't know. I think there's the thing for me is like I kind of look around and I think about what causes these issues, and you just look at society and you look at the aspects that are crumbling, and it's like, where do you even start to fix this? I don't know.
Well, I mean, starting is really early in the education.
Hmm.
Yes, we've sort of abandoned education and gone for training, because training produces numbers. Numbers are what politicians campaign on. I can prove to you I'm getting better results. How do I prove to you that I'm producing students who are better able to imagine their world complexly? That's what I'm supposed to be doing when I'm teaching them, but you can't prove that you're doing it.
Yeah.
When my
So
kid, oh,
you go for the numbers. I can prove that they are doing they are doing things that I can break down to quantifiable events. Testing.
when my kid was young, um, used to be the deal. Because of immediate dangers and stuff, when he's 5, 6, 7, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, if I tell you to do something, do it first. Then you can ask why, and I will answer you. And if I don't have an answer, then I shouldn't have told the kid to do it in the first place. Is sort of where I am. But my stepfather-in-law, step, my ex-wife's stepfather, um, got very irate seeing me do that, and he's like, "Don't bargain with your kids. You just tell them what to do, and then they do it." And I'm like, "Yeah, but then they don't ever learn why they're doing it." You know, they can't abstract out. This is just, then it's just rote.
Yeah, I'm teaching them how to be an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you see aspects of this also, because just imagining it isn't enough. So, like, a lot of conservative talking points are based upon a theoretical problem or a hypothetical problem that regardless of whether or not it has actually happened. So they can imagine a potential problem, but they don't seem to there doesn't seem to be a lot of understanding, or a lot of people get exploited to not think about, well, yeah, but like that's not gonna happen. Good example of this, the Jordan Peterson thing. So Jordan Peterson, when he went after trans rights in Canada or whatever, with pronoun laws regarding harassment and LGBT protection, no one, you have to, if you're making a legal case like this, that someone has harassed you by consistently misgendering you, you have to show that that happened. Like, you can't just say, oh, they misgendered me once, and no one would just be like, oh, they misgendered me once, I'm gonna make a lawsuit. And lawsuits in themselves are already a scary thing. So there's like a million reasons why I don't think there's been a single case of it. Even if even if there may have been times in which it was justified, but it gets built upon as like, oh, there's a law about misgendering. Well, if I accidentally misgendered them, then people will sue me. Well, no, that doesn't happen. That's not how that works. That's just a hypothetical based off of a headline reading. That's not like an actual problem.
Okay. I would disagree to some extent, but I agree. So let me cover the disagree and then I'll cover the agree.
Okay, I've got my gloves off.
Jordan Peterson had something of an interesting point, as I understand what he expressed, which was that they'd been incareful with their laws, and they'd set up a situation where, because his university adopted a set of laws as being their bylaws, and so on, that if he misgendered somebody, that would count as prima facie evidence of misconduct on the scale as if he had struck a student. If he struck a student and they could prove he struck a student, then he'd be kicked out of the university.
Yeah, but like,
and they qualified, but they qualified misgendered in the same category. And I'm like, that's a really interesting technical point.
It is a technical point.
The law that they installed was to resolve an issue where you could kick trans people out of their apartment because they were trans, and people were doing that. And it's cold where you live. That strikes me as that entirely eclipses any technical issue of this could be an issue we need to address.
Well, the problem...
Also, Jordan Peterson had been on record saying that he would not properly gender anybody.
But also, when it comes to a lot of technical potential problems, the important thing is how it plays out in reality.
Yeah, there has been...
that is a big thing, because there's a lot of technical laws that lawyers will not fucking use. Like, if you try to build, even though in a lot of states in the United States, I must say it's like 48 states, there is a trans panic defense. There are several states in which there's no way that would be accepted by the legal team, even though it technically is still a defense. There are absurd laws in the United States that nobody uses, and you can make like technicalities, but like ultimately how things play out in the real world matter far more than technical hypotheticals. This is my problem with the trans athlete thing. People make hypothetical technical things that have never played out in reality with trans women and women's sports. And it's like, if you create a hypothesis that something is a problem, but it never shows up as a problem, you might have a problem with your hypothesis of a potential bad aspect of it might be wrong on some other factor that you haven't factored in, like most people aren't.
I understand. It's just one of those things. I'm one of those people, and I find those sorts of things interesting. What do you mean if I adopt it first, I can keep a hippopotamus in my backyard? That's interesting. Okay.
Well, in Canada, there has been one person trying to take advantage of the laws, and she's not had any success. So, and I will say, trying to take advantage of the laws, but I'm also thinking that you may just be testing the law.
Yeah.
I won't say her name. So.
Yeah, but I mean, I am a part of my brain is trying to figure out how to tie this back to parasocial relationships. Chud Logic, do you have any opinion on this? What we have blabbed on about now, off topic?
Well, I mean, I can bring back around. I think Jordan Peterson is a demonstration of like this kind of weird parasocial relationship from the angle of like being a figure of authority, right? So essentially Jordan Peterson sells people the idea that he can fix their life and fix their problems. And essentially what he does is he says, like, it's off your own back, go and clean your room, go and sort your life out, etc., etc. It doesn't really, in my opinion, give, like, sure, there's some pointers he might be able to give and stuff like that, but he positions himself as a figure of authority that can solve their life issues. People then go and buy his books, pay for tickets to his seminars, etc., etc., etc. So I think, that's quite an interesting example of parasocial relationships.
Yeah. It is. And just to add, there is actually a validity to cleaning your room, I say, with a messy room. Actually, it's not the worst it's been. But self-care is an important thing. There is an actual, there's like a hint of truth to it, which doesn't help when there's a lot that is poorly understood, and that's why it's important to factor in what a person is an expert in when it comes to who you believe when it comes to information. For instance, Jordan Peterson is not a legal expert. It's just true. Saying it now. Jordan Peterson is not a lawyer and likely doesn't understand the legal system, and so it's a lot easier for Jordan Peterson to, and that might also make it easier for Jordan Peterson to talk about a potential problem, a hypothetical problem that's not going to happen in any sort of real legal sense. Savaris Mermaid studied law a bit, and so it has a little bit more understanding of some of the things, reasons why some things just aren't gonna happen legally when he steps back and thinks about about it. And
Yeah. So you do see what I mean by disagree with how disinteresting it is, but totally agree with you on the end result where you're at with the. That's not going to happen. That's not an issue.
I mean, fair. To some degree, it might also upset me because it was the similar sort of reasoning to like other conversations. Like you don't have to be conservative to make bad arguments about things by not applying the real world, because real things that happened, real facts and figures of like things tells you a lot more information. Sorry, I'm gonna go back to trans women in sports. The numbers of the actual races of trans women against cis women tells you more about trans women in women's sports than you hypothesizing about bone size and lung size and other things while not factoring in potential disadvantages. Especially because no trans woman has gotten to Olympic levels, and the 1970s trans woman who was like a top tier tennis player before she transitioned couldn't get to Olympic level in women's Olympic sports when she tried after transitioning. Like, there's a potential out there that trans women actually have a net disadvantage for a lot of women's sports.
Well, yeah, that's
based on like how things play out in the real world.
Well, part of that is in the medically thing, if you are trying to balance your hormones and you're going to balance for very low testosterone compared to athletes, you're hitting the normal for normal people, even the high end for normal people, but you're keeping it in the normal range. And you're medically working on doing that when an athlete is way outside that.
Well, that's not even like the same thing. So like with hormone replacement therapy, it's below the average for women. The average for women is like 30 to 100 nanograms per deciliter, and most trans women are sitting around 10 to 20 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone while doing HRT. And
and
consistent testosterone.
But doc, I'm an athlete, so on. And the doc says, if you want to be transitioning, this is how it works. And here's how we're doing it. And that, I mean, they're not going to be, and so the point is that they end up with significantly lower testosterone than the other female athletes.
Yeah, I mean, that might be a factor, but there might be like a ton of other factors. And when you're talking about hypothetical factors, I mean, that's why
I'm just saying that is a significant factor that puts them at a physical disadvantage.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's like a million other things, which is why most of the time with sports, because like diet makes a difference, like a billion other things make a difference. How rich the country you're in is how powerful the country is makes a difference in your ability to have better training, which makes you have better Olympic athletes. Like there's millions of fucking factors, which is why oftentimes sports is about competition, which I should have brought back to, because who cares about hypothetical advantages and disadvantages when there's still a competition being had? Trans women would have to in real life dominate and give cis women no chance, or very little to no chance, for there to even be a discussion, and nothing even close to that has happened.
No.
See, that's the significant point. Is nothing close to that has been happening. And you say you want to be a watchdog and keep your eye out for it. More power to you. But so far, there's no problem with it. We don't have an issue there. It's like voter fraud. It hasn't been happening on a wide scale. I don't think we need to worry about that.
What, are you talking about the 10 or 20 people a year who do voter fraud?
Yeah.
You know.
Almost all Republicans. Just gonna put that out there.
And that you know, you go, it's not, and that's the point, is it's not an issue. So there are reasons. You say it's not just about competition, and people will argue with you about it. And I will argue with you about that. It's not about that. It's about, you know, it's about setting up women in competition. We've already accepted that you have to have separate but equal, which we understand as a farce, in order to have women in competition. It's about setting that up so that that can happen, so that young people will view themselves as being able to do that. I also think it's important that young people who are trans, in whatever way they are trans, or they're non-binary, and so can view themselves as doing that.
Well, yeah, but that's
an important thing too.
But I mean that starts to get into the more complicated over end goal. But that being said, bringing it back to parasocial relationships, part of the problem is when YouTubers make comments like that, and it's snap accepted, because people are like, that feels like a good argument, that makes sense to me, and then they dogpile trans women who, regardless of what facts are brought up, or cis people, or just like any person. Actually, a lot of cis people, men or women, get accused of being trans if they defend trans people.
Yeah, well, there's that.
Yeah.
They should be so lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that before, where, you know, people will make comments to me where it's clear they think that I'm like a trans woman. You know, the comments they make to me, and it's like, it's so weird. Like, it's like it's their go-to, right? Like, it's what they're used to using to try and hurt people, so they just automatically, you know, go to that. It's messed up, really. But you know, for them when they use it against me, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's always funny. Which reminds me of the trans man who swapped the before and after pictures. And it's like you'll never be a woman.
You know what I did? I swapped in a picture of my mother for a while.
Oh, I feel sorry for your mother because of society.
Yeah, my mother gets dinged as trans all the time. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad and it's awful, but it's also funny that people think they can tell, because I don't get dinged as trans as much as she does. I mean, maybe today because I'm looking ragged and my eyebrows aren't shaved properly.
It's hard to say because, like, on visual mediums, it's easier for people to, people are more likely to find the angle and analyze every facial feature if they care about that.
Well, look what I don't have.
Yeah, you can't see my Adam's apple either.
You can see my mom's.
Yeah, I've got like a half Adam's apple. But
What
I mean,
is that called? Transdar?
Yeah, well, we do, but that's only T for T.
I'm just, you know, that people think that they can then spot all the trans. I just find that it's always head scratchy for me on the.
Well, I mean, it's based around.
I understand you feel you've tracked all that you can see, but how do you know that's all there are?
Well, the reasoning is because people tend to think because most men are XY chromosome and most women are XX chromosome, so people assume everything that explains everything. Well, at least TERFs do. But I think a lot of people think that there's less crossover than there is because that X with the most women XX chromosomes, that second X is just a copy, which is why everyone has those same genetics. That's why hormone replacement therapy works. That's and yeah, there's some things where it goes one way and doesn't go back, but like it's not a simple thing. That's why when you're talking about top tier athletes, there may be more ambiguity for the average top tier woman athlete. There may be more aspects of physiology related that are whatever aspects that would be beneficial for that sport. And given that most men can outperform most women, or most top tier men athletes who are men can outperform most top tier athletes that are women. And I should be clear about that because Ronda Rousey could kick everyone here's ass.
True.
Yeah.
Collectively.
Yes, collectively. And I would be the only one having fun during it because I genuinely I like losing fights because then I can learn, and I like some of the aspects of sparring, and I would have a fun time, but I don't think anyone else here would, getting beaten up by Ronda Rousey, but like...
Depends on what you're into, really.
I think I'd just be confused. I wouldn't, have time to learn anything.
I mean, fair. If Ronda Rousey just suddenly kicked open the door and just like ran in and beat me up, yeah, I would be very confused.
Very Slim Jim.
I would be like, "Hey, oh my god, that's awesome! You're like an awesome celebrity. What are you doing?" Ow!
I'm pretending I know who these people are.
Oh, wait, do you know Ronda Rousey?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
There, okay.
Can you explain more about the X chromosomes? Yes, I can. Random chatter. So, the X chromosome has like, it has some stuff with vision and like a bunch of irrelevant stuff. It has nothing to do with like, I don't think there's
Hair
anything
patterns.
gendered in the X chromosome, the last X chromosome that's paired with either a Y or a duplicate X chromosome. Now, the Y chromosome that's duplicated with might have, I think there's definitely one, maybe two things in there relating to gender. The Y chromosome has, it produces a hormone to prevent the creation of uterus and ovaries, which is why there are some men with uterus and ovaries. It's a rare intersex condition because their Y chromosome doesn't happen to have the gene related to preventing that from being created. But yeah, the X chromosome is like not that interesting genetically. The last X chromosome, there are bits.
Well, the extra tail on the X does deal with vision a fair amount.
Yeah, I mean that's the most. That's why women are less likely to be colorblind, significantly less likely to be colorblind because they have two X chromosomes relating to vision. But like most of the X chromosome, because like the rest of your genetics is X chromosomes, just most men have a Y chromosome. Although obviously some women have Y
Right.
chromosomes.
You should start the explanation. The Y chromosome is very like the X chromosome, except that one of the spars, one of the lines coming out of the 4 posts, is atrophied.
Well, yeah, but there's also different.
Not gone entirely.
Yeah, but
It's
there's
atrophied,
also the.
what remains looks like a Y.
Well, yes, but like it also is slightly different genetically. For the like I said, it has the gene for the production of the hormone to stop the production of uterus and ovaries. It's the Mullerian duct hormone, or anti-Mullerian duct hormone. Sorry, which prevents the formation of the Mullerian tubes, which is why the average person with anti-androgen the people who have the intersex condition that, or the intersex situation where they happen to be XY but don't produce a uterus and ovaries, but just like a lot of the default female stuff, because the body is basically like, yep, you produced enough testosterone, I'm gonna start making a dick and balls. I'm not even sure if anything relating to penis and testes are in the Y chromosome, although maybe. I'm not necessarily as well familiar.
Well, no, it's XX. I'm responding to the chat there. XX is male. XX is female. XY is usually male.
Yeah, and let's
You have
go
to
with
stick with usually
let's
on
go
both
with
those.
usually for both of those.
Yeah, usually
Yeah,
for both
because
of
like
those.
it starts to get a lot more
And the way you
complicated.
remember that the Y is male is the little atrophied thing usually looks a lot like a penis.
I never thought of a Y as a penis looking thing, but
No, it's the little atrophied leg.
oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Now I understand the reference, and now I can't unsee it. Thanks a lot, Perfict.
There you go.
Ruined my day. No, yeah, it's because if you're talking about, like, if you're making a generalization, it's fine to use XX and XX, XX and XY when you're talking about a population of a species, but it becomes less useful if you're talking about an individual person, because there's always going to be genetic variation.
And it's SRY bonding that is what determines sex anyway.
Yes. Yeah. And
there are 27 of those.
Yeah, there's a ton of there's also, worth talking about XXY, XXX, XYY, and
yeah. And the various benefits and negatives, and there's plenty of XY women who are just cis women who have XY chromosomes, and there are cis men with XX chromosomes.
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
because the shape, the Y and X shape are just related to what's most common, but it's not a guarantee for what genetic information is in the final 2 genes.
And plus, nobody's all XX or XY anyway, which is another.
Well, no, yeah, nobody. Well, I'm sure there's someone who has like all, like, obviously there are extremes on either end, and there's a lot of extremes in the middle, and it gets a lot more complicated with everything. And then there's things associated with gender that doesn't actually apply, that is based around European society and isn't like a factor in other cultures, other culture men physicality or whatever. And then with all the crossover and the world thing, you end up with a lot of different and unique people.
Idris Elba is the XY person, so he's the one.
I mean,
but
Idris Elba is a hot man. Like, you can appreciate the aesthetics of Idris Elba. That being said,
I started playing with my hair as soon as I mentioned
that being said, we are getting close to the end of the show. You know what? Just as another reminder, like, comment, and subscribe, hit the notification bell, whatever. We'll start with you, Chud Logic. Where can people find you? What are you working on? If you have something to promote.
I don't really have anything to promote at the moment. I'm kind of on a bit of a hiatus for about a week or so. Then I'll be back. But yeah, just search Chud Logic on Google. You'll find me. You'll find Twitch. You'll find my YouTube. You'll hopefully find my Twitter as well, which I don't run, just to be clear. Okay, that's a third party that runs that because I've already been banned twice from Twitter.
I mentioned it in the promotion for the Fluid Voice. I mentioned that to your Twitter friend of Chud Logic, you know, that so that they could help promote.
Yes,
you.
Excellent, good stuff. But yeah, you can find me on all good social media platforms. Thank you very much for having me on, and thank you for letting me share some of my thoughts.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on. Like, it's always nice to have these conversations, and just sometimes conversations can help you actually think about things. That said, I need to stop getting distracted. Perfect. Where can people find you?
The Rumpus Room, and I do this weekly.
Yep.
That's what I promote.
That's it. That's why I can never do
Discord,
an
the Rumpus Room.
That's why I can never do an @ for Perfect, and I'm just like Perfect because Perfect isn't on Twitter, to my knowledge.
Nope. No, I don't tweet.
Christy, where can people find you? Is there anything you're working on?
Christy Abbey is my channel, the same as it is on there. Although I think, Christy Abbey, just look it up.
There are also links to your stuff in the down below in the channel page, I believe.
Oh, okay. I've never looked and I've never asked. So I should. I'm so bad about doing the actual YouTube stuff.
Look, I've improved over time, and I will try to promote you some. I promote people whether they ask it or not. I'm not very consensual about that. It's a consent problem.
I've recorded the first interview for 2021. So that'll be going up Tuesday. And so my channel is back active. Apparently I hadn't done an interview since July.
Ooh.
Well, there's still the lost episode, but which I will post at some point. It's just I have to find it.
Yeah. And is that all?
Normality Quake at Normality Quake on Twitter. And Chris Abbey music. It's just like Christy Abbey except without the TY. Is also active again. So.
Okay. And you can find me at ozmainthedark.com. It's technically redirects you to ozmainthedark.wordpress.com, I haven't updated the site for a while. I know it has, at the very least, some of my social media links, and I know it displays the fluid voice scheduling if you're ever curious about guests. Because I don't have an official fluid voice page, but I wanted to help promote some of the stuff. You can find me on Twitch on Saturdays and Sundays, oftentimes streaming rating. That said, I'm not streaming rating tonight because I am tired as fuck. I did not get good sleep last night, and I don't have the energy to stream rating. You'll find me on the Fluid Voice every week.
You can't heal people when you haven't slept well.
No, I can. I just can't heal people and pay attention to chat, and it's just streaming is work. Streaming is extra work, which I can't deal with. I can heal people okay. Currently, which is fine because we're doing AQ4D, so it's not like that big of a deal. But yeah, and at some point I should finish the I'm trying to finish the raid progress video for Naxxramas of the Obsidian Council, which I have the video stuff, but I haven't been editing on my main channel, which is Ozma in the Dark on YouTube. And life is beating me up, so I haven't gotten the other content. Oh, and you can find me here also. Me and Christy are usually here for the LGBTQ rants, which is also on this channel. And that was a lot. So
which is Wednesdays at 4 Eastern.
Yes. So I hope you had a good time. I hope everyone had a good time. And I don't know, conversation is better than debate for me. And whatever. Oh, you're not doing the Spock thing.
Your life matters, your voice matters, and you matter.
Oh my god, I totally forgot that. First episode, already downhill for me.
Live long and prosper.